Hello and welcome to Deep In Pact, a proud member of the Duff Network. We dive deep into Warbo's most bibliophilic work, 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And we are back to talk about Possession 15.1. We're well and truly into the abyss now. The Barber's free, and let's see what damage he's going to do, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, this chapter's like such a crazy way to start off the arc. Like we dive head first into the action. And what I really want to talk about at the start here is how fucking insanely awesome this setting is. They're like it's this collapsing maze of a castle that's actually haphazardly building itself upwards, and they're trying to run up. It's like it's like the bastardized crazy version of like those stairs in the Harry Potter movies, mixed in with like a little bit of the movie Labyrinth. I don't even know if I have the words to convey exactly how cool I think this is, but just the image of this crumbling / like poorly put together library forming in front of them as they're running up away from this, horrifying demon is just like, this is the part of Pact that needs to be made into like an animated or live action series. Like, this is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It's interesting. It didn't necessarily give me this vibe, this chapter, but I kind of imagined that this might become a thing of like the Abyss Library is sinking and building as we go, and it gives you this image of them while they're climbing, just kind of running on a treadmill in place because it's sinking down and building more in front of them as they go while the demon slowly catches up to them. It's just kind of a bad situation to be in.
Yeah, well, I like the whole idea that the thin corridors of flimsy material that is the library is just surrounded by this complete and utter blackness of God knows what. Is what really sort of can give you that idea that maybe they are just running on a treadmill, or even if they're not, that it makes it so precarious.
Yeah, definitely.
It's great.
Yeah. So obviously their goal is to get to the top and then somehow get out. They'll figure that out when they get there.
I mean, it's hard to blame them, but you're right. It's kind of like, okay, so we just got to keep running from all this bad shit, and then we'll get to Faysal, and let's not think about that somehow.
Yes. Something I quite liked is in one of the very first lines here, Blake is looking around and he sees a Bahame, and of course his thought says Callan's age, related to the man that killed Callan, which is such a obvious abyss invasive thought. I loved it. It's like, oh yeah, we're back. All right.
Yeah, my response to seeing this is like the third line in the chapter, and my response to seeing it was just like, oh fuck, this thing's back. Like, I do feel like part of what this chapter does is just start to make us realize the huge mountain of shit that our team is under right now.
Yeah.
We get reminders of all the ways the Abyss can try to fuck with them. We're constantly being reminded that Molly's going off somewhere nearby, and then obviously like we get to see Barbatorum in action a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. It does just kind of set up a few things that can come in to fuck with the team later, right? Like, Blake only has this one intrusive thought here, but you can kind of see that it will probably come back more this arc.
Yeah.
And there's a few others, like, this chapter kind of reminds me of the fact that Hillsglade House had some, like, architectural tricks, like, space warping kind of stuff, and that doesn't necessarily come into the library yet, but it does have a few sentences where it just kind of reminds me that existed and potentially could come in as a twist or a trick later on in the arc as well. Like, I feel like this chapter is setting those things up quite nicely to stick them in our mind.
Yeah, that's true. We haven't seen any specific space warpy stuff that stands out to me. But, like, obviously I already compared it to the movie Labyrinth. And, like, I feel like a labyrinth is what is forming here. And that feels like maybe an abstract, interpretation of it. Like, this place is becoming a maze, and that might be in part due to those sorts of elements of the house.
Yeah, well, it's becoming a librarianth. Is that a thing?
It is now.
Sorry, that was very stupid. So as they're climbing upwards, there's basically stuff falling down all the time. And one such falling thing falls and breaks the floor, giving him this kind of Lord of the Rings-esque split in the ground between these two bits. And of course, Blake is on the wrong side
I
of
was
it.
thinking Land Before Time.
Oh yeah, of course you are. Yeah, so Blake and a Bahame woman whose name we later learn is Millie on the other side of this, 5 or 6 meter gap that separates them from going upwards and the rest of the group.
Yeah, and I think this is all part of the chapter that's dedicated to really drilling into us how flimsy and flaky all the structures are here. And to me, that was just like, I'd forgotten how good the Abyss was at making just everything so fucking difficult. Like, every floorboard has to sort of creak under you and potentially break away. Like, you just can't have a moment of peace. And of course, now we've got that lumped on top of, demons and shit chasing us. So it's good to be home.
Yeah, it really is just a nightmare, right? Like, there's no way around it. It is just horrible to him. And to him specifically, like, Blake kind of feels it singling him out here for a test, right? Which I think is a bit self-important, but also he is the protagonist and does have a relationship with the Abyss, so I'll kind of let it slide.
I mean, I actually kind of got the impression that it was maybe doing this to a handful of people. Like, obviously, we see what happens later with Catherine. That seems pretty specifically designed to fuck her up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I don't know if it's just Blake, but he is definitely one of the candidates that the Abyss seems to enjoy playing with.
Yeah. I think the fact that he has wings makes him an ideal target for, like, trade-off questions, because, of course, he could at any point just fly all the way up.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things he starts to think on as the Abyss sort of carries on here is how this place has a slightly different personality to what he saw in the Drains. Like, he felt like the Drains was very patient and sort of trying to wear you down, whereas this place might be more reflective of the people who are in it as it's forming, which is basically, in special part thanks to Molly, I assume. This just seems like a real angry part of the Abyss that lashes out very easily.
Yeah, I think one of the best examples of this is Blake uses, Blake is offered this choice by the Abyss. I keep wanting to call it the Drains. By the Abyss, by the library, of leaving this woman behind or, sacrificing yourself to save her. And he thinks his way around it, right? He finds actually quite a clever trick, which is get her to freeze him, use him as a stepping stone, unfreeze him, and then they're both across, right? And it's a clever trick. And normally, kind of narratively, you'd expect a trick that kind of solves that problem in a clever way to pay off. If they get saved, maybe they lose a little bit of time, but it works overall. But no, the library is just like, nah, you can't do that. I'm not going to let you think your way out of this one, and just unceremoniously chucks a brick at her and she dies. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it feels so unfair, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is. It kind of breaks that convention that we've seen throughout the book of Blake coming up to a problem, finding a clever trick, maybe losing some flesh, but still getting through it with most of his goals intact.
Yeah, whereas this is, he does that here, he finds the clever third way, and the library is like, oh, fuck you, no, then no one can have her. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be interested to see how this sort of idea plays forward as they're in the library, because that's what really sets this up as the meaner part of the Abyss. This is a part of the Abyss that when it presents you with an option, if you try to outsmart it, it will just fuck you over. And so that's gonna kind of change how Blake might have to play along here.
Yeah, and the thing is, presumably just shooting a brick at Millie's head, it doesn't help the Abyss's goals in any way. It's not like that's some clever way that has made Blake, whatever, sacrifice a part of himself. It is just a kind of like, oh, you don't want to play along? Fine, well, I don't want to play along either. Like, it just doesn't help anybody. It's just kind of spiteful.
Yes, so thanks, Molly, probably. Although, I don't know, some of the other Jacob's Bell residents that are down here probably aren't having, or are having some influence on that.
Okay, now this might be a little bit too tinfoil, but does the fact that her name is Millie and that's so close to Molly mean anything? Or do we think that's just a coincidence? It
No,
also is such an
that
unbehaved name. Like, it must be short for, like, Maleficent or something.
oh yeah, it's definitely short for something ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see if Millie's ever brought up again, and maybe there is some little neat poetic connection to be made there, but
Okay, we'll see.
at this stage, no, I don't think so.
So, yeah, Blake catches up to the rest of the group, but as he is catching up to them, the barber catches up to him, and basically just starts easily taking him apart.
Yeah, you know what? It turns out the barber's a little bit scary.
Yeah, powerful demons. Actually powerful.
I mean, it's fun because it's very different to Like, I think frightened me a little bit more when we saw it in action, just because of how abstract it is, and it's this cloud of stuff that grows and can encompass you, whereas Barbatorum acts in a lot of ways just like a person sort of thing, like in its movement strategies and stuff. But of course, what's really scary is what Barbatorum does to you when it gets a hold of you, presumably.
Yeah.
Blake manages to dodge that bullet this chapter. But I feel like the real reason you're trying to be afraid of Barbatorum is because of, or at least just kills you and you get like a quick death. Barbatorum doesn't give you that mercy.
The fact that was kind of somewhat bound, at least stuck in location, and Barbatorum just can go anywhere, it really does make a huge difference. Like, the fact that you're never actually safe, you're just moments ahead of him catching up to you.
Yeah.
He does just feel like there's this word of God where Wildbow said that he kind of wanted a feeling somewhat like the Terminator, of just this unstoppable force that is coming towards you, and you just don't have anything that you can slow it down for moments, but you can't actually stop it. And that's really what the barber feels like. It's it's inevitable.
I actually love that sort of, if that's what Wobber was going for, I think he kind of nailed it, because I love the sense you get that I don't think we ever see Barbatorum like even do more than just walk. Like, he doesn't even power walk, he doesn't go for a light jog, he just walks at you, but because of his way he can throw the shears and then teleport out of them, it's like you kind of get your cake and eat it too. Like, Barbatorum only walks after his victims, but because he can throw the shears, he can move quickly when he needs to.
Yeah.
So you kind of you get the threatening way that he just calmly approaches you, also mixed in with the way that he can catch you up over large distances. Yeah.
It occurs to me that I didn't put this together before, but it also quite reminds me of the horror movie It Follows, which again is this great movie based around this monster that is just constantly walking towards you, and it builds up such a scary like thought of, okay, well, what's going to happen when it catches me? And I think the same thing applies to Barbie, and we kind of see what's going to happen when it catches people with these ghost children later, but it really is quite not just like physically painful and horrifying, but also psychologically terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, of course, Blake gets caught by Barbatorum almost immediately. And Evan is trying to help out, and there's this funny moment where Barbie stabs Blake with the shears, and Evan does a little bit of like a nudge, and nudges it so the shears just go through a hole that was already in Blake's body. And there's this weird moment where everyone's kind of looking at the shears and being like, "Huh," and Evan actually says, It's just a classic. It's weird. There's one or two humor beats in this chapter that really worked on me, just because they are such great payoffs to the incredibly mounting tension of the library.
Yeah, absolutely. This is great as well, because what saved Blake here is the fact that he's just always losing bits of himself, like literally.
Yeah.
It's a good little moment.
Yeah. And here's another moment that I think is nice to show breaking of conventions. Blake tries to use that goblin chain that he's been carrying around for a while to escape from Barbie's grasp, and Barbatorum just reaches out and grabs the goblin chain, and it screams and dies. And it's fun because we we got this idea that Mara could touch somebody to kill them, but we never actually saw it being used. And it obviously set her apart as a high level of power, but not seeing it kind of meant that it was like, we knew about it, but we didn't actually see it. And so we weren't actually shocked and like violated the rules with it. But we see it very, again, unceremoniously here by Barbie, and it is just horrifying. Like, we know that, okay, he can just kill something if he wants to immediately, and yet he's got Blake here and he's kind of planning on doing something with him. And I like the idea that, based on what we see later, the goal of the Barber is to catch Rose, right? Like, he wants to unbind himself to the Seal of Solomon. I like the idea that using his shears to fuck with Blake would be a better way to get Rose than just killing Blake. So, horrible things in store for Blake.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously there's a part of Blake that you could use to, fight Rose.
Yes.
Right? Like, you could take away the bits that don't. I mean, I guess I'm a little confused as to whether the Barber's goal is actually specifically Rose. Like, because would that free him from the Seal of Solomon? I guess maybe I need to go back and read the details. I kind of thought once you're in the Seal of Solomon, you're in it. I didn't think that was that part. Like, I thought the binding that was tied to the Thorburn family was his current circle that he was in.
Yeah, sure. Maybe it is just like vengeance.
Yeah, like that I get and can believe. I also, like, if he is under the Seal of Solomon, the less people who know about him and how to summon him, the less that's going to matter. And
True.
Rose, in that aspect, would be, the primary target, because she's probably the one who has the best chance of being able to tell people how to summon him and use him.
Yeah.
So she could be the target for that reason.
This puts me in mind for a previous discussion when we were talking about which others we'd want to see bad things happen to, and we got onto the idea of like sentience among others. How sentient do you think the Barber is? How much do you think he's a product of instinct versus, thought and logic?
Yeah, I mean, I've been assuming he's actually somewhat clever. I mean, obviously, Rose was able to make a deal with him, and he cut Rose and Blake according to specific guidelines.
Yes.
Like, I wonder if that's an interesting other part of his dynamic. I wonder if he doesn't like Blake and Rose very much because they were a product he was forced to make, against his natural artistic inclinations.
Yeah.
For want of a better phrase.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But like, I've been assuming, we saw last chapter that Faysal got more intelligent, and so I'm assuming stuff like that has happened to the Barber as well. Yeah,
maybe this is just a very, human-centric thought, but because we don't see him speak, I'm kind of on the fence about it, Like, I feel like being able to talk is the primary thing, and probably he just hasn't.
Well, I think the manifestation of intelligence in different types of others is very different. And I mean, we've seen that, like, Faysal got the ability to plan, presumably, but he didn't get the ability to have emotions or care for stuff. So what might be interesting to learn is what sort of improvements to his brain, again, for want of a better phrase, that Barbatorum might have gotten thanks to humanity. Like, what differentiates Barbatorum now from the Barbatorum that might have existed 20,000 years ago,
Yeah, interesting.
It may not be as simple as, like, better planning, but it might be some manifestation of intelligence in the way he goes about it. Like, maybe the ability to chop things up more specifically is just sort of what he gained, rather than before, where he maybe was just someone who would chop things in half with fairly basic instincts.
I think there would have to be some changes, because the idea of something that travels in reflective surfaces kind of necessitates modern technologies. Like, before, if he was traveling around in reflective surfaces, that was water, right? Like, that's the only reflective surface before humans created, mirrors and polished metals and stuff like that.
Pretty much.
So there must have been a change. Interesting. So Evan comes to the rescue here, basically.
Again.
Helps make an opportunity for Blake to get himself away from the Barber, which he does. And then Blake kind of falls off into the darkness, but is able to fly back up and catches up to the others. And he finds the rest of the group being basically accosted by a teacher and her students.
Yes. This teacher's very fun. We always see her for a little bit. But I have forgotten how much fun boogeymen are.
Yeah, they're all just their own little mysterious bundle of horror, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Like, maybe I'm just sort of in medium MD mode because of the stuff we've been talking about over there. But like
Mm.
for Monster of the Week type stuff, you could get a lot of mileage out of boogeymen just because there's an inherent variety. There's like these fundamental rules that are kind of so generic that they barely matter, and then you've just got like endless variety on top of that.
Yeah, and of course the others can break the rules, and that's again like
Yeah,
quite horrifying in its own way.
exactly.
Um, so a fun quote here is that Blake realizes the Abyss is pulling together boogeymen from other areas with that match the library theme. So he sees that the teacher and children have come from what seems like some kind of a school abyss area. And the abyss is just kind of doing some interior decorating here, matching its residence to its theme, which is so like it made me feel like it was just kind of tidying up and categorizing things, which feels like such a weird human way of building a horror theme park.
Yeah, I mean it's so interesting. I mean we've talked so much about how the abyss is a source of change or whatever, and then obviously last chapter we started talking about how humans are that too, and obviously the abyss has had this sort of intelligence to it. So obviously, the question there is, as we were just talking about with the barber, how much of the abyss's intelligence is thanks to humans? Like
Yeah.
what instincts might it have gained from the humans that ended up inside of it?
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of a fascinating thread. I hope we get to see more of throughout the arc because yeah, like the idea that the abyss is theming itself and actually, looking around and saying, I mean, these guys would be a better fit for the library. Is just kind of fascinating and like what is it achieving by building a library with themed others and stuff in it, like that sort of shows some recognition of the importance of meaning and motif.
Yes,
uh
the way I kind of reconcile this is practitioners obviously have a strong sense of theme because it's kind of core to this idea of the dramatic helping them amplify whatever they're
yeah
doing, right? And so as practitioners fall into the abyss kind of feeds off of their thoughts and ideas. And so now the idea of theming being important, as a practitioner would for their domain, for example, the abyss kind of has gleaned over, centuries of eating thoughts of practitioners.
yeah, actually I really like that, and especially because it just got a whole dump load of practitioners added to the
Yep.
library area specifically. So that might be something that's actually very important to the abyss right now, if it is. Like I feel like the way we've kind of got this infantile area of the abyss that's still forming itself might be important going forward. Like how
Yeah.
if it is being influenced by what's already inside of it, like how much power does that give our group to help steer things even a little bit? That could be really
Yeah.
interesting.
Like it's basically the abyss's version of a stem cell, right? You can kind of push it in a direction and potentially it could take a different shape.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's just occurred to me that back when the house was being sieged, we saw that book paper demon. I'm not sure where she ended up, but
Yeah,
maybe she's going to be here.
I was thinking about her as well. Actually, I didn't Blake kill her with the hyena? That's a pretty final.
Yeah, so maybe
I
not.
Yeah, because yeah, I had the same thought. I was like, oh, she might be back. That'll be fun. But I
Yes.
think she got hyenaed, which means she's probably not coming back.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Oh yeah. So there's this other moment that I really liked where Rose is basically, as Blake arrives, Rose turns to this teacher ghost and tells her, "Shut up. I don't care what you are. I don't care. You don't scare me, and I refuse to let you waste our time." Which is such, like, it's so. And the teacher even looks a bit kind of shocked at this, and the kids all react as well. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, you can just tell it off. It's it reminds me of Go to Your Room from Doctor Who, like just telling off this
Yes.
monster.
That's a great comparison. Yeah, I mean Rose seems to be tapping the conquest energy pretty bloody hard this chapter. It's fairly evident in everything she says, and like you can't fault her at all, can you? Like that's just this is the time.
Yeah.
to have somebody just giving orders in a way that everyone kind of instinctively follows. So, I good on Rose.
Yes, it doesn't work, unfortunately, or it kind of works for a moment and then fails. But they eventually beat the teacher by showing her how terrible the books that are here are, and she gets so disappointed that Blake has the opportunity to kill her, which is, again, cold. Like, it actually seems to mirror to me Millie's death, right? The Abyss just kind of quickly and effectively dispatches Millie, and Blake does the same thing with the hyena to the teacher here.
Yeah, I like that comparison. Because it's like, I mean, there's so little thought put into this. It's just while she's panicking, Blake just comes up, slits her throat, and then kind of turns around and he's like, "So, should we get going?"
Yeah,
There's so little meaning put into it.
And something that we've seen is Rose has seemingly made a deal with another other here, a newspaper man, whatever that means. Presumably like, hey, help us and we'll set you free and you can go hunt some, well, not Behames, but I guess Faysal. And so the fact that this teacher sees these books and has a reaction like this obviously means that there is some level of thought and care in there that could be bargained with, but Blake's just like, nah, and just stabs it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sorry, you saying that just made me think of the guy from the tenements. Was that it? The buildings?
Defenestration Man. Is that who you mean?
Yeah. Yes. Wonder what he's up to.
You think Newspaper Man and Defenestration Man are long lost brothers?
No. I'm just thinking about boogeymen that they kind of met in the Abyss, and it's like, oh, we'll set you free if you just stop fucking with us. He fits that bill, and I'm wondering what he's up to see how bad we should feel about saying stuff like that to these boogeymen.
Yeah, have we seen any fresh dead bodies at the bottom of broken windows lately? Anyway, so with the teacher gone, these children are kind of freaking out. One of them gets down to Barbatorum, who cuts it in half, and we see this and we think, okay, hold on, this is Blake and Rose right now, right? And these two halves, one of them falls into the fire and immediately dies, which is, I guess, Blake. And the other one seems to have kind of composed itself, allied itself with the Barber, and started to advance upon the group. And it's fairly effectively and quickly dispatched, but even so, it's this idea of, okay, Barbatorum takes one thing and turns it into two disjointed, they're referred to as broken wholes instead of halves, which I think is great.
Yes. And like, I mean, obviously what we're seeing here is what Barbatorum can do is if he captures something, he can turn it into a bit of a perfect weapon for him. Like, clearly what he did for this little ghost boy was take out everything that wasn't just rage and violence, which, probably wasn't much. But like, anyway, like he turns this kind of already kind of crazy ghost boy into like this ghost girl that is absolutely kind of raging, closer to a zombie from 28 Days Later type situation. And you can see how that's going to turn. If this becomes a more prolonged conflict, you can see how this turns Barbatorum into a serious long-term threat because every obstacle you put in his way that is like, alive-ish is going to be able to bounce it back at you really fucking hard.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Barbatorum characterized as being a great tool to send after practitioners.
Yes.
And while Alistair hints that he can do some stuff to actually stop him or slow him down more strongly, it really does feel like anything you throw in his way, he can just cut through or change to a tool using those shears.
Yeah, well, if you send an other at him, it's presumably going to come back at you perfectly designed to fuck you up.
Yes. And when he bounces one back, it doesn't just get stronger, it gets different. It gets, like, unusable by you.
Yeah.
So Blake basically decides to stay behind to stall Barbie while the others get away. And actually what he says is, to Rose, he says, "We already decided I would die tonight. Run," which is full-on sacrificial Blake mode.
Yes, very, very full on. And I mean, especially because we didn't quite touch on, but Barbatorum had his hands around Blake's head earlier, and there were signs that he may have lost even more flesh.
Yes.
So, yeah, guess we'll see where this is all going by the end of the arc. Like, Blake doesn't have much to lose, but he's still ready to throw it away.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I guess he's already made that decision. I mean, they say we'd already decided I would be the one to die tonight, which isn't quite correct. Blake is just kind of slightly reinterpreting that in a way that suits his sacrificial position here, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Blake gets rid of this ghost child and then does quite a cool move where he blocks the shears with a book, and then the Barbie starts to emerge from the shears, and so Blake just kind of yeets the book with the shears in it over the edge, which presumably has set the Barber back a fair amount. A good strategy.
Yeah, it's clever. It's probably not going to work again, but here we are.
Yes. So now that's twice that Blake has scrapped with the Barber and escaped without too much damage. So obviously keep an eye out for number 3.
Oh, that's not a fun thought, is it?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it could be, doesn't necessarily have to work in the Barber's favour. It could work in Blake's favour, but it seems unlikely.
Yeah. Like, even if it works in Blake's favour, like, I think, the thing we saw with Faysal and Johannes, that ended up having to be a 9-time deal.
Yeah.
Like, 3 gives you a little bit of power in that moment. I don't know if it's enough to tip big scales against the Barber or anything.
Yeah, especially if you have so little that can actually affect it,
Yeah.
So Blake catches up to the others and finds out that they've stalled. It's actually a funny moment where he thinks, okay, we can do this as long as we keep moving. Okay, never mind. And the reason they've stalled is because Catherine is unresponsive. She has read some of these books and is losing it.
Oh, wow. Like, this is a moment.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of... this makes it into a lot of people's top moments of Pact, which is just because of the image of Catherine reading these books, which are basically telling her horror stories about her own life, and she just kind of can't help but be sucked into them and stay in this place forever. It's horrible.
Yeah, and so basically, like, what's happened is she's found this book that is just designed seemingly to play on her worst fears.
Yeah.
That no one loves her, not even herself.
Yeah.
I mean, the bit that really stands out to me and makes it really tragic is one of the big ones is that her the book says that her baby doesn't love her.
Yeah.
Which just like, I mean, I'm not an expert on parenthood or motherhood, but I feel like having this sort of irrational fear that your baby hates you is probably something a lot of people go through, like, at some point.
Yes.
Especially if this is already an insecurity you have about things like your husband and yourself.
Yeah, and I can imagine being a Thorburn really doesn't help. I mean, Catherine's kind of been defined as making a lot of sacrifices, including, in a lot of ways, compassion for others. Maybe not her family, but for people outside of her family directly. And so it's kind of very easy to extend from that and think, well, in her more human moments, she must look at that and think, actually, people don't like me. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, exactly. Like, I think that's a very kind of normal and relatable sounding insecurity to have. And the Abyss is able to play on it so perfectly. Like I'm fairly confident that Catherine's son may have grown up to hate her. Like, I think the odds for that are pretty good. It's less than a year old at the moment, though, I think. So I doubt it's there yet. Like, it's still a baby.
You still got time.
Yeah, I don't know if it yet perceives hate or can comprehend hate properly.
Yeah, so it will hate you, but then it doesn't have object permanence. So just play peekaboo and it'll forget who you are.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like to me, this is the Abyss kind of playing on an irrational, unrealistic fear that Catherine has kind of bottled up, and that makes it more tragic.
No, yeah, I think this comes across to me as the Abyss is lying. It's playing into her fear. This isn't something that is decidedly true.
Yeah, and maybe that's an aspect of this meaner, younger Abyss area that we're seeing here. Is it's even crueler and malicious in the way it's targeting everyone.
Yeah. So Catherine is taken by the Abyss, potentially turned into a boogeyman that we might see later. Who knows? A crayon eye boogeyman. That's fun. But anyway, they leave Catherine behind with her lighteners, and the rest of the group continues on.
Yes, and I mean, as I said at the start, what an intense way to start this arc. Like, holy shit, this is going to be a an intense arc, isn't it?
Yeah, this arc obviously is the first chapter of. Sorry, this chapter is the first chapter of an arc that has set up a lot of kind of horrible things to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, I kind of put together a few of the things that this chapter has set up for us that we can look forward to. So one that we talked about is the idea of the library seemingly breaking the rules of the story even more than previous Abyss areas have. So yeah, I can't wait to see how that plays out more.
Yeah, we're on our third trip to the Abyss. This is a version of the Abyss that is harsher than the others, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see what extra helping of shit times that brings.
Yeah, and I was going to say it seems more personal, but I guess that's not necessarily true with the Blackfish. And I guess the Blackfish is basically what has just happened to Catherine, and she's failed her interaction with it. But yeah, it seems it's got something to prove, which feels it's more urgent, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's something very inherently horrifying about distortion of the written word, which obviously this is going to start to play into a lot. The idea of horrifying books is something that exists a lot in other fiction. I made a reference to Magnus Archives before, which has a lot of horror books in it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see Walbo play with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked, like, we both separately had the thought of, oh, I hope Paper Girl's coming back. So it's pretty clear that we're keen on these sorts of others and stuff. So I'm very keen to see what else gets thrown at us this arc.
Yeah, and of course, it is a simple premise of you're at the bottom of a hole and the escape is at the top. You've got something chasing you. Like, it almost feels kind of video gamey in its simplicity, right? It's a platform where you've got to get to the top, avoiding monsters, and there's a constant, inevitable wall behind you that will kill you if you fall too far behind. Like, it's quite a fun, simple setup that I think will lead to a lot of different dynamics.
Yeah, but this is like that last ghost house level in a Mario game, like the one that's actually hard.
Yeah.
And is just a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I guess we'll see how these threads kind of play out over the course of the arc.
Yeah, can't wait.
Now that we're wrapping up our weird recording schedule, it means that we can start doing discussion questions again, which is fun. So we thought we'd put a discussion question in here for the new arc. We've seen the Hillsglade house turn into the library as it fell into the Abyss, and it started us thinking more about the Abyss and what other places in the Abyss might turn into. So our discussion question that we've built off of that is, pick a famous or important place to you and explain what you think the Abyss might turn it into.
Yeah, so, we've just seen this. I think, like, obviously we had the drains and the tenements, and we've speculated on what those might have come from. I think as well, when Blake was in parts of Jacob's Bell, he almost slipped into what sounded like a carnival place, which, I mean, that's horrifying. So, yeah, I love this idea of picking, like, a famous place or somewhere that matters to you, and like thinking about what the Abyss might do with it, and in particular the sorts of people who are there. Like, if it's sunk with people in it, what influence might they have? Like, we're seeing the practitioners and Molly have on the library at the moment.
Yeah, there's a cinema in Sydney that I go to a fair amount, and I was thinking of places that are important to me, and I had this thought of what the Abyss's version of a cinema would look like. The screens playing these kind of horror stories of your own life, and I don't know what the confectionery would turn into, but something horrifying, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'd be like, popcorn buckets of
worms.
And stuff.
No, that's very like a scream screen, like PG rated horror stuff. I'm sure Walbo would think of some more scary stuff to do with that.
Yeah, he would.
But anyway,
so leave those in the discussion thread that will be in the show notes below. We'll be talking about those in 15.4.
Yes. So yeah, the discussion that we linked, leave it there. If you want, you can also leave us your thoughts and ideas for All Packed Up, our 24-hour live stream. We've been talking about it more and more. Our schedule's starting to come together. So if you want to get in some cool ideas for what it could be, get them in now.
Yes, there's also, in the show notes of the last few episodes, you would have seen it, and it'll be in these ones too. There's a link to a Reddit post with some more info on All Packed Up, including a link to a Google form where we're taking suggestions for all sorts of things. And we'd love more of those. We kind of need more of those. So if you've got ideas for what you'd want to see there when certain donation goals are hit or any other things, head over onto that link and send them our way, please.
Yeah. If you want to promote this show, we're getting to the end of it, but hey, why not? It's bingeable now. Then why not leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, maybe? I think you can leave reviews there, whatever. And help other people find the show. That would be great.
Yep. And if you want to learn more about the other shows on the Do For Media network, head on over to doformedia.com. The book club is actually tomorrow when this episode comes out, I'm pretty sure. Wait, no, is that for the last one? Hold on, we're going to have to edit around this.
Cut here. Get the Barber touring with his shears in. I'm sad we're going to cut that great joke.
Yeah, that's from 14.x. I didn't update this.
There's probably a new What You Say.
Yeah, so What You Say is back this week. They took a week off for the holidays, but they're back to,
they've
dive
finished
into
season
the OC.
1 as well, right? They've nearly finished season 1.
I think they've still got there's 27 episodes in season 1 or something ridiculous.
America.
So they've still got 2 months left. But I've still never watched a minute of the actual OC, but I love this podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty great, isn't it? If you are absolutely in awe of the sheer amount of media discussion podcasts that the Duff Media Network is able to put out, take note that it's only because of our wonderful patrons. If you'd like to become one of these wonderful patrons and help support these shows that you hopefully love, or at least maybe if that's too strong, at least you enjoy them, head on over to www.patreon.com/duffmedia and you can become a patron yourself. Support us and also get some mad perks. It's a little quid pro quo.
Yep, and if you want to make sure there's more Wildbow material that can be the inspiration for books in the library, head on over to patreon.com/Wildbow and keep him horrifying us all.
Yep. Yes. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon for Possession 15.2 on Wednesday the 8th of January. See you then.
See ya.